14 years. Let's do this. So I just saw The Incredibles 2 and it was absolutely phenomenal. After seeing the first when I was very young, I bought the game The Incredibles Rise of the Underminer for my Nintendo DS, and I was under the impression that there was a second film, so I spent hours searching on the internet for it, but I never did find it. 10 or so years later, it's now actually a thing, so needless to say, I have a lot to say. Now, where to begin? This movie is legitimately one of the best animated sequels I have ever seen. What I really appreciate about this movie is the way in which it pays so much attention to detail from the first. There are an abundance of subtle callbacks, little details, and logical consistencies that align with the original Incredibles film, which was so goddamn satisfying. Something that can really frustrate me about sequels is the way in which it feels too separate from the other installments in the franchise. However, The Incredibles 2 really feels like it's a movie that's set in the Incredibles universe, utilising character models that very accurately replicate the ones from the 2004 original, with all the OG voice cast, including Holly Hunter, Elastigirl, Craig T. Nelson, Mr. Incredible, and Brad Bird, Edna Mode, returning for the movie. Brad Bird himself does an amazing job of directing this picture. Despite displaying visual sophistication in The Incredibles and The Iron Giant, this is his best looking film ever in my opinion. The dramatic lighting and shimmering locations made this film an absolute marvel to look at, with a perfect art style that displayed everything as immaculately detailed while still keeping the fundamental endoskeleton of how everything appeared based on the first film. Another likeness it bore to the original was the excellent writing standard. Every time each character spoke, it felt like we were listening to the very same ones from all those years ago. This film is also immeasurably funnier than the first. There are plenty of awesome one-liners from both franchise mainstays and newbie side characters that made the entire audience and I burst out laughing. One of my biggest issues with The Incredibles was the way that Violet and Dash didn't get as much dialogue as Bob and Helen, but the side characters themselves were also used to full effect in The Incredibles 2, the script successfully juggling all the characters it had at its disposal evenly in its 125 minutes of runtime. Dash was irritating in the first movie, but he was far more boisterous and likeable in the franchise's second outing. The standout character from the movie by far is Jack Jack. He is the definitive funniest part of this already hilarious motion picture, offering up boatloads of visual comedy that anyone can laugh at. Everyone seems to be complaining about the villain in this movie, but in my opinion he was a really cool character, and the writers did an awesome job concealing the identity of Screenslaver, making it an actual shock when we found out who it was, without it coming off as a cop-out, which I found incredible seeing as I'm a 15-year-old and the film is marketed towards children. Looking back, The Incredibles 2 even has a more entertaining plot than Pixar's initial installment, along with infinitely better action sequences and an extravagant score that puts a modern spin on the original riffs. The only issues I can say I have with the movie is that the very last moments of the scene in which the villain's plan is foiled were a tad disappointing, and that I would have liked to have seen more of Frozone, but that's literally it. For all it doesn't accomplish as much as the first, it makes up for it tenfold in how it goes beyond it. This is also one of the very few movies I've ever seen where the audience enhanced my viewing experience. A guy was sat towards the front who laughed at every joke, and his laugh was really funny, so when everyone heard him laugh, we all laughed at it as well. The great jokes really hit, and I was in hysterics at points. Also, I got the entire audience to applaud at the end of the pre-film animated short, which by the way was hilarious and charming, and at the end of the movie, which is rare in the UK. The only reason I would say this movie isn't better than the first is because so much of what makes it as awesome as it is down to the existence of The Incredibles. Overall, it's about on par with its predecessor. So I'm giving The Incredibles 2 the same rating as the first, that being a solid 9 out of 10.